1, 2, 3, and we are live. We are live. We are live. We're live. Everyone's looking good. Sun is shining. Hands up if you're in aircon, and thumbs down if you're not in aircon.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it had to be done.
Dave, we've messed up here somehow. I'm not sure how, but
We've
yeah.
pulled the short straw in.
I hear you said you've got a fan, and I'm sat in the garden, so it could be worse, couldn't it? It could be worse.
We shouldn't.
Exactly. Just while people are joining, realising we're going live, hello for those that are joining. If you can hear us loud and clear, give us a thumbs up, pop us a like. If you've got questions, like we say every week, this week we've got a special guest. We've got Uncle Dave from AFP in Wokingham. He is our Mr. Resident Mortgage Advisor, gives us all of the inside scoops with what's going on with rates every single week. And when you see those graphics come up on a lot of the partners' pages, it's Dave that's helping us out with those. So really, really appreciate it. Someone's listening, Facebook user, probably in the landlord page group, because it doesn't show their identity in a group. So thank you for letting us know you can hear us loud and clear. So if you've got questions for Andy, me, or Ellen, and specifically this week, Dave, the mortgage advisor, fire them in the chat. We will answer them live. They can be about property, about mortgages, or anything else. We're not shy. We'll take a rude one. We've got no problems with that. Ellen, you're doing well. You're in the podcast room by the looks of the soundproofing.
Podcast studio, soundproofed, air conditioned. It's been a busy day, so a nice place to chill, reconvene.
In the dream. And Andy, you've got the Avocado neon light logo sat above your head like a beautiful angel.
That's the one. Yeah, good. Bagsy did it just before Ellen came in as well to make sure I had prime spot. Sat here in the aircon. All good.
Good stuff. And you got the little avocado, or not so little, comfy avocado mascot just over your right-hand shoulder as well. So, Dave, going to come to you. Bit of a mortgage update from you, if that's okay for everyone that's just checking in and listening, watching. Obviously, there's a lot gone on this year. Interest rates have changed. There's a lot of news and negative, positive, everything going on at the moment. Cost of living, base rates obviously jumped another 0.5% recently. Yeah. So just generally speaking, how are you finding things in the mortgage world? And is there anything that you would like to advise or throw some tips for anyone that's, thinking of selling or buying between now and the end of the year, I guess, or going into next?
Yeah, you're right, Ian. There's a hell of a lot going on out there. Rates have not been this high for, I can't remember the stats. I dare to say something around the 20 years. It's absolutely crazy. But it's still a buzzing market out there. There's a lot of activity. People are still trying to move home, which keeps us busy. So I think I've alluded to it with you before that there's a couple of reasons that interest rates are on the rise. There's obviously the Bank of England base rate. That's a big driver. Banks have to price according to that. But because of the volume of business the lenders are seeing at the moment, they are absolutely flat out busy. NatWest at the moment are taking 20 working days, so pretty much a month to process an application. And compare that to their best days, which you get it done in 2 or 3 days. It's really busy. And the only way the banks can control the flow of business are to try and increase their interest rates. So we've got a sourcing tool that brings up all the best deals, and if they're at the top, they get a load of business. So if they tweak their rates up a little bit, drop down that sourcing, they tend to see the volume drop off. But what's happening, as soon as one bank drops off, the next one's busy, they increase rates, and it's just a snowball effect. So all the banks are bumping their rates up to try and stem that flow of business, but it's just not working because they're all doing the same thing. Sounds crazy, but that really is what the lenders are telling me at the moment. So I think that is actually a short-term problem. Once they get their volumes under control, hopefully that competition to almost outprice is going to end, and we might see things start to calm down and rates start to drop again. So with that thought, I mean, I wouldn't tell anyone what to do one way or another, but me personally, I wouldn't go for a 5-year fixed, not whilst rates are at 3.5% like they are today, because you might look at rates in 2 years' time and see them start to come back down again. And so I don't know, shorter fixes, tracker products maybe, could be something to definitely talk to your mortgage advisor about right now.
Do you think that potentially then much like we might have said with the property market prices, we're there or there around the peak, we believe, in terms of how prices have gone and what might happen over the coming months. Still, there'll be maybe some incremental increases, but there is talk that we're at the peak. Do you think that's potentially the same with rates in the coming months then? So that's why you kind of would say don't go 5-year fixed, because actually you might find there's a better deal in 2 years' time and so over the 5 years, if you fixed twice in that period, you'd be better doing it that way than just once potentially.
I think quite possibly. I wouldn't say we're at the peak now. I think, unfortunately, things probably will get more expensive. I think the base rate is going to keep climbing, probably for another year, maybe. And I don't think we're going to see the flurry of increased rates stop yet. But maybe over the next 12, 18 months, then we might peak, then we might see things come back down. So tracker rates right now, I think we can probably pick a tracker up, I'll quote Skipton, at 0.66% with a great loan to value. So that's going to put your fixed rate somewhere around 2.5 compared to probably closer to 3.5. Sorry, the tracker rate at 2.5 compared to a fixed rate at 3.5. So if you can ride that out for a year and then benefit from when they start to drop down again, that's kind of definitely a thought process. One way people are talking at the moment. But if you fix now, 5 years, 3.5%, you might actually see some better deals coming up within that 5-year period.
That's quite interesting because it's a bit of a mortgage gamble, isn't it, Ellen? You're kind of going, right, I could lock in and be secure at 3.5, or I could take a risk, be a whole percent lower, like, the best part of a third lower, and just hope that the base rate doesn't jump up that whole percent in that period of time. Are you having a lot of buyers at the moment talking to you about changes in the mortgage rates, or maybe people have kind of gone and got a rate from 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, then they find and they think, oh, actually, it's a bit different now when they go back to lock it in?
Yeah, we see a lot of people who, from their initial start, when they start looking and they speak to a broker and they've got X budget, by the time they find and they revisit that process, the repayments have gone up, their sort of loan to value, everything is so affected from the rate rise that actually the budget they thought they had is way off. And, I think certainly now is really imperative to keep in touch with the broker and make sure you know exactly what you have to spend each weekend you're going out looking, because the market's still busy enough that we are seeing multiple offers on properties, and there's nothing worse than when someone goes, yeah, fine, I'll go 15,000 over, thinking they can, and all of a sudden, that's just not realistic anymore. Things are changing so quickly.
Yeah, the goalposts keep moving, don't they, Dave? It's hard for you at the moment. I would imagine, are you having a lot of those buyers come back to you and say, right, I'm ready, let's get my 3% deal locked in, and you're like, well, actually, it's not that anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as rates are concerned, we're having to do our job 2 or 3 times for every customer. Gone are the days where you quote a rate, they go off, find a house, they come back, it's the same or even cheaper. Now, like Ellen just said, they will come back a couple of months later and it's, oh, yes, sorry, that's going to be 150 quid more than we spoke about before. And that is a difficult conversation. Most people can find the money. Interestingly, what also happens is the banks themselves adjust their affordability model. So if there's a significant period of time, if somebody's spent 3 or 4 months maybe looking for a house and rates have gone up like we have seen them recently in that time, the bank might be offering you a lower mortgage than they would have 4 months ago, because their calculations are all based on how much the payments are going to be for you at the end of the month. How much is that interest rate going to be, which affects those payments? So if they're suddenly sat there saying, well, actually, you're going to have to spend 200 quid a month more on your mortgage, they'll probably offer you less money because they just don't deem that higher payment as affordable. Strangely, the FCA scrapped the stress test that we've probably heard about in the news. But I think very wisely, lenders haven't really followed suit. They're still keeping a stress test in place. So they're not just saying, can you afford your mortgage at 5% or at the variable rate, whatever that be. They're probably still putting an extra 3% on top just to be safe, just in case rates do keep climbing. They don't want people all of a sudden not being able to afford it. So their calculations include a stress test. So when we see the small changes, yeah, it does impact the amount you can borrow.
That's quite interesting, actually, because one thing that I've noticed from being, I don't know if you know, I do a little bit on social media. And when I'm on social media, some of the comments that I get when I'm talking about the market, Andy, you probably find this as well for you. Some people have just got it fixed in their mind that the world is about to implode, recession, everything's coming to an end, you know, cost of living, this, that, and the other. The world is going to implode. House prices are going to halve overnight. And, you know, we're all going to be using coals and kind of naked wood fire to keep the house warm. Like it's going to crash. And one of the things they've jumped on since the 1st of August when the stress test changed is the equivalent of going back to 2006-7 when everything imploded last time because, you know, there was 105% mortgages, this, that, and the other. That's one of those things, Andy, isn't it, where people look at that as a real negative, but actually, as Dave said there, that's quite nice to know actually they're staying secure on it. It gives probably a bit more confidence to the average first-time buyer, I would think.
Yeah, it's the classic negative news, isn't it? People read it, jump on it. But then I think if you take yourself out of what's on the daily news and think about what the housing market's gone through in the last 24 months, for example, you know, it's had 4 consecutive base rate increases, a global pandemic, and house prices have boomed. So, you know, it's as rock solid as it's ever been in probably one of the most difficult time periods that's ever existed. So, you know, if you flip it that way and have a look at it, then there's no reason for it to implode and everybody to be living off coal and growing their own crops and trading things like that. You know, if we just all just took a step back and realized what's happened in the last 24 months, okay, we've had a little increase to the base rate again and people have got to pay a little bit more. But in reality, you know, people still need somewhere to live. They still need somewhere to move to. And if you're living in a flat and you want to buy a house, you're going to make that move. In my opinion, and if you're living with your parents and you're going to buy your first property, you're going to make that move. If your budget wise, you want to buy a 2-bed and you can't afford it, then you probably just slip back into a 1-bed, or if you want to buy a 4-bed, you buy a 3-bed. You know, people will still make the moves, and all the cogs in a transaction will still be there and still work. So yeah, I think it's all nonsense. I think we're still good for another, well, at least back end of next year, personally, in terms of small growth, not as strong as it has been, but I still think it will take small steps forward.
Demand is still there. I think that's the biggest difference than the last time the market crashed. The demand wasn't there previously, but now that there's still some real supply and demand issues, you know, that's very heavily weighted in one favor. So I think that's going to help us sort of stay strong.
Yeah,
From
I
a
totally
point of view on that. Sorry, Ian. I think if you can ride out a short-term pain really of a relatively high interest rate, things will settle down there as well. So like Andy said, if you're going to move, do it, because it's not going to be like this forever, is it? We would expect maybe 2-3 years higher than normal interest rates, but then hopefully plateauing again and coming back down to a bit of a more acceptable level.
I think the other thing that's very, very clear, if we go back to the pandemic and we look at the actions from the government in the pandemic, because there was, you know, the same people that bark at the moon were also very much saying the world is about to implode and the market was going to crash, and, you know, the housing market was tumbling, and it did quite the opposite. And a part of that is because the government they want to be hero status in terms of offering some incentives. And at the moment, there are no incentives in the property market. Help to Buy is obviously now gone. Stamp duty holiday is gone as well. So I just wonder, with potentially, you know, down the line election, you know, potentially coming up and everything that's going on, is there going to be a case that actually some of what the government are looking to do is going to be to take that hero status if the market did start to come down and if prices were starting to drop? I think we're in a state of mind at the moment where they know how important the housing market is to the UK, and they would come in with something because there is no incentive at the moment. So that's something that I would expect to see, especially with the government in play at the moment, although it's in turmoil, obviously. But I think the Conservatives would definitely bring some sort of incentive in play to keep the housing market going. And much like you said, Andy, stocks and shares have obviously tumbled a little bit since the pandemic, and some of the other investment strategies have gone down, but the housing market has stayed strong. What sort of conversations are you having, Dave, with investors at the moment and landlords? Are you still seeing more landlords sell than buy? And the ones that are buying, what's their goals and their process? What's the trends there?
Yeah, I'm still seeing purchases, let to buys as well, quite frequently. Something we have seen a lot more of is the limited company buy to let mortgage. So people purchasing investment properties in the name of a business. Who knows whether that's the right thing long term? Government's probably going to button up all the loopholes and benefits at some point to change the regulation with that. But the buy-to-let market is slightly different because of you can get a bigger buy-to-let mortgage if you go for a 5-year fixed product. So there is a different driver there as to whether you're going to fix for 2 or 5 years a lot of the time. The banks are more cautious on their lending for 2-year fixed, a bit more generous on a 5 years. So it isn't just about cheapest rate, what's going to happen in the interest rate world. It's about how much can I borrow? And that pushes people towards a 5-year fix normally. But yeah, still buoyant, still people out there looking at arranging buy-to-let mortgages, and a lot of 5-year fixes are being sold.
That's good. And Ellen, talking to sellers, we've definitely seen across the group actually valuations increase since the turn of August. I would say, in the last sort of 10 days, we've seen valuations up, even though it's summer holidays, which actually in August normally valuations are down, but they're definitely up across the group. What sort of conversations are you having with people you're going to see, yourself and Sanjay, people that maybe are not coming straight to the market or are thinking next year? What's the general chatter out there in the world of the public for sellers?
I mean, the general conversation when it comes to, do I do it now? Do I wait 6 months? Do I do it in 3 months? What do I do? Now is always the best time. We don't know what's going to happen. There is no crystal ball. But one of the more sort of serious conversations, I think people who are coming to us for valuation now that have perhaps sat on their hands for the last 3, 6, 12, even 18 months and have seen house prices on an upward trajectory are kind of going in with sometimes dollar signs in their eyes. They think that their house is also going to be worth a lot of money, which isn't necessarily wrong, but things are where mortgage lenders are tightening up things. We're seeing more and more down valuations. If someone wants X price, we can get them X and above, no problem. That's not an issue. Achieving that price from buyer demand is fine. We had a house only a few weeks ago. We had an open house, 7 offers, substantially over asking price, all of the offers. And we've just had a down valuation on the mortgage, a 10% down valuation, which is probably the biggest I've seen in a long time. And that's the reality. We can achieve it from a buyer demand perspective, but it's the other guys that we need to appease. And that's really who's kind of controlling what the price is. So that's a cautionary tale that we're sort of telling a lot of people at the moment. Just be mindful that you might need to have your own contingency plan if that happens.
I don't think we should get into surveyors with estate agents and a mortgage advisor on this chat, but Dave, are you finding that as well? Because that's actually a really good point. And I know Ellen and Sanjay, definitely in Bracknell and some of the other areas, we're really struggling with that at the moment. Bracknell the prices have rocketed as high as they have done anywhere in the last 24 months. And there's a variety of reasons to that. But across the board, is that a big bugbear of yours as well? Are you seeing a lot more down valuations in the last 3 months?
I have, yeah, absolutely. Ellen's bang on. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a significant percentage, but more than we have seen in the past, without a doubt. And big ones as well. I had a person buying at about 950, down value by best part of 70k this week, which is a big number, and it's really tricky for people to understand that, yes, the surveyor is trying to say that property is worth X, but I'm sure you guys will be the first to say it. A house is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. The surveyor might not be fussed that it's next to a great school or this, that, and the other, but to an individual, they want that house. They'll pay money for that house, and that drives the value. So, yeah, it's very difficult as far as that's concerned. We are seeing more than we have done in probably recent years. And it's just trying to educate the customer, having those conversations. Sometimes it's a showstopper. If you're up at 90% loan to value and all of a sudden you've had a 10% down valuation, you're having 10% of your borrowing wiped off and you can't do much about it. Those lower loan to values can jump up the LTV banding. Yes, suffer higher interest rates, but they might be able to do something without changing the loan. But yeah, first time buyers particularly, they could be in trouble when that happens. Yeah, it's a big issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not just about how much is that one buyer prepared to pay when you've got 7 buyers prepared to pay that. And I had the same with one where I had an open house, I had 5 offers over asking price. The down valuation came into the buyer below the actual asking price. I had 5 people that were prepared to pay over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was barking at the moon. Andy, you like that one, Ellen, don't you?
My new favourite phrase, barking at the moon.
Use that one, barking at the moon. We'll all be doing it at some point, I'm sure. Andy, you're buying property at the moment.
Yep.
You're an estate agent buying a property at the moment. Offers in, and you're in the process of looking at what you can do with it. So from your perspective, knowing cost of living, I was talking to someone from Utility Warehouse today in the office, actually, having a chat about the fact that October we're going to see obviously fuel prices go up. Then again in January, his expectation is that what you're paying today you will be paying double in January. Is that something that you thought into context when getting the mortgage, looking at affordability? Have you kind of now, when you're doing the fact and find sheet, with the broker or on your own, you fill it out and you look at your own cost of living? Are you thinking about what cost of living is going to be next year now, or are you not fussed because you just know you bought that property and it's going to be worth more when you complete on it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, Dave's done the mortgage for me, so he's best placed to help me on the answer of this. But I wasn't fussed. I was very blasé with it, if I'm honest with you. I fixed into a 5-year. I have heard obviously about what Dave was saying about 2 years and trackers and things like that. For me, I wasn't bothered. I knew if I locked in at 5 years, if anything goes up or down, it's irrelevant. I'm paying the same for the next 5 years. It's going to rent for X. I'm going to make a profit on it. And the little bit I'm paying a month more on interest, it works out to be about £100 a month more. In reality, fingers crossed, I'll gain well over £100 a month in equity growth. So in 5 years' time, yes, I'm paying an extra £100, £120 now in interest. But in reality, I'll cash that in on the back end when I sell the property and I've made it in capital growth. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I wasn't that fussed by the rate. Ideally, I'd like to get it lower, of course, because it's a business transaction. But at the end of the day, it's still profitable and I'll benefit in 5 years as opposed to monthly. Yeah,
absolutely. Because, and I'm glad you're doing the mortgage with Dave, because I didn't know, and I thought I might have thrown you in it. Okay.
Good old Andy.
What's quite good about that, I guess, is it's good to highlight to sellers and buyers. It's not about buying a property today and worrying about what the price of it is in 9 months' time. It's not actually about worrying about what the price of it is in 2 years' time. It's about when you come to sell the property, then you need to know what's going on in the market, what's going on with your plan, and then we look at the pricing. So it's not a major issue about what happens over the next 9 months. And it's sensible because you know that you're locked in at X for 5 years. You're going to have the property for 5 years, and you're very confident as someone in property that it's going to be worth more in 5 years' time. And Akil agrees with you. He's jumped in, said, well said, Andrew. So you get the thumbs up from him. And he's also asking you, Dave, how the blood pressure is on me and Ellen and Andy all quizzing you in the corner of the screen. But you're okay. We're comfortable with this, aren't we?
Oh, Akil's been in this seat. He knows how it feels. Yeah. We're all good. We're all friends here, aren't we, eh?
Exactly. And Akil, if you've got anything to add that you're finding, then feel free to throw it in the mix. I want to come to you, Ellen, and just sort of ask the question: is there any new listings coming soon? Any little secret squirrels you can tell us about? What's on the bubble? Tell us about it.
We've got a really exciting listing that is coming up. So the chap that owns the house, he's just turned 100. He bought this house from new 50 years ago. It might be dated, but it is immaculate. There's nothing you need to do to move in. You know, kitchen's 10 years old. Everything's absolutely fine. It's all in working order. Gorgeous garden. It's a 3-bed detached house in Bracknell. And I get so excited when I see old things that haven't been touched for so long. It's one of the very few houses in the road. You want to buy the worst house in the best road. And to call it the worst house is a bit mean, actually, because there's nothing wrong with it. But it's such an exciting opportunity, and that one's coming up. And I know it's on the hit list. When people call up and say, I want to move, I can't find what I want yet, so not put my house on the market. This is the one you're looking for. So
okay. Well, did you say price range? You didn't say price range.
500, coming up 500,000.
About 500. Okay, excited for that one. I got 2 to probably tell people about, both in Warfield, be going live, one on the weekend, probably one next week. Both around the 700k mark, 4 bedrooms in Warfield. More often than not, they're gold dust. One's in Woodhurst Park, and one is walking distance to Whitegrove School. So if someone is looking for a 4-bed in Warfield, circa 700k, great schools, nice condition inside, pick up your bags, move straight in. Both nice open plan space downstairs as well, then definitely give me a shout, drop me a DM. Andy, anything on the bubble? I know we were talking about a bungalow, I think you were saying.
Oh, it's an ex-bungalow. It's been developed on. It was a bungalow last year. It's now a 3-bed detached with bifold doors and an island kitchen at the back. So really, really nice. That should be ready in the next, I'd say 2 weeks. He's just pushed it back by a week. So I'd say 2 weeks away until that's ready. That'll be coming on shortly. A little 1-bed as well. 2 allocated parking spaces. That's a sub 200. So they normally go out quite quickly. It's about 200-300 meters away from the train station. And then a 3-bed semi in Langley. That'll be coming on. That's owned by a lovely Italian family. Needs a little bit of work doing to it. Maybe a wall or 2 taken down to open it up. But that should be coming on all within the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks.
Get the take on booked in around dinner time then. Love that. Absolutely. We've got a couple of comments here. So Lauren and Ryan over in Tilehurst direction joined us probably a little bit late, but they said, would you recommend 2-year fixed at the moment? That, I guess, question, Dave, depends on whether you're buying it for buy-to-let or resi by the sounds of it, from your point of view. Yeah.
I mean, we've touched on the buy-to-let, different drivers there for a 5-year fixed. If you're just thinking about what's happening with interest rates, and this is my personal view, I've got no crystal ball, like Ellen said, I would go for a 2. I would go for a 2 and ride out these increases, and hopefully at the end of that, we'll be in a better position. Yeah.
Okay. No, great. If you were buying in January, you should have got your 5. And obviously, if you're buying now, go for the 2. That's how quickly the landscape moves, isn't it?
Literally.
Akil's saying, because we asked him, lenders changing rates daily, which obviously you sort of really touched on in that mortgage update, that, again, lenders, they're all over the shop at the moment, pulling, changing, all sorts of stuff going on. So if you're not talking to a mortgage advisor, we've got Akil commenting here, we've got Dave from AFP. Talk to Dave, because he'll give you a real honest overview of everything going on. Don't go online and start looking at hook rates and thinking that Money Supermarket's done the job for you. It hasn't. You need to talk to a broker. It's worth absolutely their weight in gold in this type of market. They will save you thousands of pounds based on having the right conversations. So if you're thinking of moving next year, thinking of moving now, looking to buy, have a chat with someone like Dave, because as you see, he knows his stuff. He's in the game, and it's the right thing to do. We've got Sanjay. Is there any lenders offering an automatic extension for a mortgage offer?
Yeah, there are. Hey, Sanjay. Definitely. If you're buying a new build, there's lots of options there. There's various banks. I think the best for a new build is they will even extend for a further 6 months. So you might get a full year on your offer. Otherwise, you're testing me with the lenders' names and I won't commit to it, but I know there are a couple that will extend for a month, pretty much no questions asked. But then there's a couple on the other end of the scale that are very rigid. If your offer runs out, that's it. You've got to resubmit and suck up whatever interest rates are, at that point. So big mixed bag. But yeah, if you're worried you might not complete within 6 months, there's banks that we know will give you an offer. Sorry,
interesting one, Dave. Actually, Stuart Bock, who works over in Maidenhead for us, he runs his business out of SL6 Maidenhead. He said to me the other day that he had a buyer whose mortgage offer was about to expire through HSBC. I don't know if you can comment on this, but I'm going to go with it. They basically found out in the terms of the offer, if there was a revised mortgage offer because of a price change, it automatically extended it 6 months. So they added 500 quid to the price of the house and got an extension of 6 months.
Clever move, and he's right.
So just a cheeky little loophole there.
It is it is a cheeky little loophole, and HSBC are pretty much the only lender that are doing that. But yes, you're dead right, they will. And I used that facility this week with one of my customers, and it's got them an extra 6 months on the lifetime with the offer. It's great. Halifax is easy to change the product. All you've got to do is change the interest rate, and that triggers an offer extension. But you've got to change to whatever rates are now. So you might have fixed something 6 months ago at 2%. You're then going to have to suck up a 3%, but you get another 6 months, pretty much no questions asked. I think it's NatWest that will just give you that extra month. There's different options out there, definitely.
It used to be like you got 2 shots. I think it used to be. You used to apply twice, and then on the third time they're a bit like, nah, that's how it used to be, I think, but a bit different now, is it?
It is. A lot of lenders are fairly rigid. There's two reasons for offers expiring. There's the interest rate, so they only honour an interest rate normally for 6 months, and there's the property valuation, so they don't have as much confidence in the valuation after 6 months. They want it reassessed. And they're still fairly hot on those two things. Most banks won't give you much more than a week if you ask, but there are a few options out there that we just discussed that are much more generous.
And it goes back to talking to experienced agents like us and experienced brokers like you, because we can find the answers to these problems. We can find the solutions to these problems. If you're trying to do it all yourself, or you're talking directly to your bank and things like that, you might not get that information. I asked Akil how he was finding things. He's given us an essay. It might cut you guys out slightly. Ellen, you got to do this like a meerkat. There you go. So just scanning through it. One of the things you mentioned about solicitors not being quick enough, we won't get into that because we're at the end of the chat, not at the start. On a serious note, though, he did say time to stay close in consistent communication with your property agents, brokers and solicitors, which we all totally agree on. Keep an eye on rates that expire in 6 months, as you could benefit from doing a product transfer at today's rates, as I believe rates will be close to 5% in 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Fixed rates at that level, wow, it could be concerning, but who knows?
I think
have we lost Ian there?
You floored him. Akil's absolutely floored him with that last comment.
I'm stuck with the meerkats here, Alan.
Just us. We'll have to keep things going.
Oh dear.
Oh
well. Well, I'll comment on that. I mean, there is a possibility rates could get to 5%. I don't think everyone should believe all the doom and gloom that are out there, but there is a lot of chat about the Bank of England putting it up another % over the next year, and that will put us in the mid 4s, definitely. So yeah, he might not be too far off, but fingers crossed it's a temporary blip. Fingers crossed we'll see him start to tumble again after that.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Wow. That's it. The hope is gone. What are we doing for anyway?
Oh, I bet he's swearing now, isn't he? Blaming Akil for everything.
Exactly. Absolutely. So they've heard it here first. Uncle Dave's the man. I'm joking.
God.
Wow.
So, Andy, how's the property transaction coming on? Are things moving for you now? Are you finding it? Akil touched on the solicitors there. I can't see any grey hairs just yet, mate. But
I was going to say, to be fair, obviously there's a lot of negativity around solicitors and timeframes. I completed on my sale in 8 weeks from offer agreed to completion. And I'm about a week away from exchanging on my purchase. So that's a similar 8 to 9 weeks on that one. So, if you get the right solicitors, the right broker, the right estate agent, you know, it is possible to put stuff through. Obviously, the average now is something like 150 days or something mental, isn't it? You know, or beyond that. But you know, if you get all your eggs lined up, you can make a good one. But you know, it is what it is. But it just goes to show, if you choose the right solicitor, right guys, then you're good.
How much does the chain impact that? I mean, obviously, there's so many different solicitors, so many different factors that play with it when you've got a big chain involved. Is that one slower solicitor gonna ruin the whole experience for everybody?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, both those sales and purchases were a one link chain, but I generally find there's one on a bigger chain that will slow it down. But it's about that estate agent that's got communication with it in taking control of the chain and encouraging them and pushing them on. But you know, ultimately, 9 times out of 10, there's normally one that's slower. But you know, like I say,
got to try and keep on top of it all.
The right ones, isn't it? Choosing the right ones.
Sounds
but
like
I think,
we're all right, aren't we? That's it. Hey?
We're at the minute 35. Ian's dropped out. Ellen's dropped out.
We wrap it up, eh?
Wrap it up. Speak soon.
Brilliant. Thank you. Cheers. Right.